Welcome to the Bromley Adult Education College Digital Drop-In Podcast, getting you back to work with confidence.
Hello, I'm Jill Collier and welcome to episode 26 of the Digital Drop-In Podcast. Today I'm joined by Michaela Channing. Michaela works in TV and is very successful in her field in Australia, and I just want to find out a little bit more about it as to how you get into the sort of industry that she's in and what training you need and how it all works. So hello Michaela.
Hello Jilly, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, very
How
good.
are you finding the UK?
Really, I love the UK, although I am very cold, as you know. The temperature is dropping rapidly, but I got myself a big coat, so I'm happy.
Good. So, what exactly do you do in TV? What is your niche or?
So what I currently now do in television is I work as a floor manager and a producer, and I mainly work in sport. That is my passion, and that's what I focus on now.
And to somebody like me, what is a floor manager? I don't know what you do. What does that mean?
So as a floor manager, depending on what sport it is, you will sit on the boundary and you'll work with the production team or the broadcaster and facilitate the product that goes to air that you watch on television at home. So you'll work with the commentators, the boundary rider, you'll work with both the teams and the league to execute the product. So building those relationships with the team and interviewing players pre-game, half-time, full-time to tell the story of the day. So whomever is versing who and bringing it to everyone's televisions at home.
So you call it the product. The product is the game, the match,
it's
or
the broadcast.
The broadcast.
Yes.
Okay, so the product is the broadcast.
Yes.
And that is what you're paid to
facilitate.
To the highest possible standard
yes.
with all the relevance that's going on at that moment. So you have to really think on your feet, I'm assuming.
You do. You have to be a very good problem solver. You always, front of mind, is the people that you're working with and who is around you and your crew. But how do we all work together to make sure that we can execute the product that we want to put to air? So that's mainly the focus.
Right. It sounds daunting to me as never having worked in that field. Where does this all begin, Michaela? When you are at school or college or university, do you think I want to work in TV, or is it I know I want to be a floor manager and I don't care what it's in? Where does this thought process start, way back when?
I think it's different for everyone who works in television. For me, I've always had a love for film and TV. And I basically just started with that in mind. So I went to TAFE in Australia. That's where you can get your diploma or a certificate. So I went there to start with studying film and TV. And from there, I thought I wanted to do film, but very quickly fell in love with television. And I think I liked the high-paced environment and the thinking on your feet. I really liked that
live
element.
As opposed to having to take lots of takes.
Exactly.
It just has to go right that day, doesn't it?
It does. And if it doesn't, how do you fix it? And there were little elements like that came forward to me that I thought, I think television's actually where I want to be. So from that, then you move into getting your diploma in TV, and you have the opportunity to work on lots of live broadcasts. And then I sort of fell into sport when I was about, 17 years old, which is probably irrelevant, but, it's about 13 years ago now. And for me, throughout my whole career, because I don't want to bore everyone, you realise what little areas of television you find fascinating. Some people will go into TV and think that they want to work, maybe in the corporate side, or they want to do studio-based products, or sport or whatever it is, but it's little baby steps of learning about the industry where you find where you actually want to go. And it's taken me a long time to realise that it's actually sport that I want to work in.
But I mean, I guess like any job, you don't always have the luxury at day one of saying, well, I want to work on live sports broadcasts. You have to take what you can take, and presumably,
Exactly.
I think I'm right in saying that you've worked in other areas
Yes.
to get to this point. You just have to take that first job. Must be like, you know, gold dust to you to actually work on a production team doing
Totally,
anything.
absolutely, yes. And I mean, I love all areas really of television, and I started in news because that was the first opportunity that presented itself to me. For me, sport was just always trickling away for me throughout the 13 years. But, you know, I've worked in news. I moved into lifestyle programming where I was a series producer, and I travelled the world doing that.
Wow.
But every time I'd be back home, I'd always do, you know, a sporting match or, you know, something, you know, it would sort of always be there trickling along. So it wasn't until maybe about 4 years ago that I really thought, no, it's sport that I want to focus on. So it's taken me a long time to get there. You know, I was, you know, making, you know, cooking shows and travel shows, and it was still in the back of my mind that was something I was interested in doing. But I was able to tick the box of being a series producer traveling around, you know, so I've been able to hit little milestones that I thought, yes, that's what I want to do. I want to be a series producer. Yes, I want to be a supervising producer, or, you know, whatever it is. But then you kind of realize, you know, it did take me, you know, 8 years to go, actually, no, it's sport that I want to do. So who knows what's next?
Yeah. But I think I always say to people, where you start to where you finish, and I'm not, you know, you've got many years ahead, but life takes twists and turns that you could never really predict when you're doing your diploma and thinking, oh, it's not film, it's TV I want to do.
Yeah.
Even, you know, 10, 20, 30 years on, you can never actually predict where that is going to take you.
No.
And isn't it lovely that we have these feelings in our heart that we can't necessarily explain, that is something is saying to you,
Yeah.
I want to, and you have successfully done it, get into sport. But as you say, along the way, and you must get different kind of experiences, because if you were travelling around the world, which I think many people would be very interested in, and I think I would love to travel around the world, you know, producing programmes, rather than live TV. I think, you know, the adrenaline of it must be amazing, but the anxiety must be. So when you were producing, as you say, cooking shows or travel shows, that's actually not live, is it? That's just TV.
Yeah, no,
So
that was it's a recorded product that we turn around post and then cut together an episode and send it to the network. So it's a completely different process. They're not similar in any way.
if anything went wrong, could you re-record in those?
Mostly, yes. There would be some cases where we'd do a live cooking event with, there's a famous chef in Australia called Matt Moran, and we would do a live demonstration, and those times, if one of our cameras haven't picked up the close-up shot, I have to find another cut point, or have to write in a voiceover or interview him and cut that in. You have to, all of it really consistently throughout TV, is you have to be a very good problem solver, and communication is key. So if something goes wrong, you need to communicate it immediately to fix it and rectify it as fast as possible. Bad news needs to travel fast is always what I think.
Right. So I'm guessing, are you self-employed and you take projects on, or are you employed by a network? How does it work?
So I now am a contractor, and I am hired by different facilitators or broadcasters to come and fulfill a role for them or fulfill a project for them. So sometimes that could mean that I'm on a project for, like, the World Cup in Australia this year. I was hired by a UK company to work for them for 6 weeks on their product. In other cases, I might just be booked for, if it's Test cricket, for example, 5 days. I go in for 5 days and I execute the product and I leave. Or in some cases, you have one football match and you go in and you do that 1 day for them and you walk away. So when you're working for so many different broadcasters and facilitators, you do have to be very professional about the way you operate, and very discreet about what you hear and what you kind of say in those environments as well, I think.
So you must have to have quite a few plates spinning then, because you're effectively working for a lot of different people, would that be right? Different networks or different companies?
And yeah, exactly, yes.
So I'm assuming in something like this, you've got to, right from the get-go, really start building up contacts in different companies or different...
Well, I actually think it's about relationships.
Right.
So you'll work with, a different maybe director or producer, and you'll build a great relationship with that person, and they'll move on to another project and they'll go, actually, I could really use a floor manager. Who should I get? Oh, I liked working with Michaela or with Steve or whomever it is. And then they'll pass your name on to the broadcaster or the facilitator, whoever's booking you, and you'll get a call from them. They'll say, hey, such and such said, we'd love you to work on the football, Right. So then it's all word of mouth, I think, really, in a lot of cases in TV. So relationship building is key.
I'm sure you're right. I think, you've got, it's not exactly people look on your LinkedIn profile.
No.
Where do we need a floor manager?
They don't.
Let's go to LinkedIn.
Yes.
There's a huge element of trust, isn't there? And you've got to trust the people that you're working with. So
absolutely,
if they like you. So that, to an extent, must take a number of years or a period of time to build up knowing enough people in the industry.
Absolutely. It takes a long time. I think a lot of people come into the industry and they're, very passionate and very ready to take on all the big jobs. But there's actually a lot of waiting of okay, well, when is it actually going to happen? When am I going to get the call? Will I get that job? And most of the time you won't.
Really?
Yeah. So you have to stay positive, and positive's probably maybe not the right word for some people, but if you're passionate about it and you really want it, you stick at it,
Yes.
And a lot of people get disheartened because they lost a job. I think sometimes no's just as good as a yes. Well, because it opens up another door,
Yes. I mean, certainly I know a lot of people in the acting world, and it's a numbers game in acting. You go for so many kind of auditions knowing that you're never going to get them all. You've just got to have the pipeline open.
Yeah.
And I think with you, not that you're doing that, but an element of rejection. I guess you've got to have a tough skin, haven't you?
You do have to have tough skin. But I think also, like acting, if somebody doesn't book you for a job, I almost think you can't take it too personally, because like acting, you just maybe didn't fit that role, so you just have to go, it just wasn't for me, and it actually just makes when you do get that next job, or you do get that call the next week and you do get on a big project, you go, oh, thank God I didn't get that job, so you can find...
Yeah, that would have conflicted, and I've now got a 6-week booking as opposed to a 6-day booking or something.
But I think it can be very disheartening for some people because they do see it as rejection. But, I think you just have to, you have to just move on quickly. If you sit on it and you are disheartened and sad and you let it get you down, it takes away from the next job and the next opportunity.
So would you say you spend an amount of time, if you like, unemployed or unbooked, but you feel confident enough that you know enough people that enough work's going to come in to pay the bills? Or
I think every one of us operates very differently. Some people are fine to just not work for 6 weeks, whereas I work in multiple different roles in TV, so I try to stay consistently busy. That's always my aim. You want to be doing at least a couple jobs a week,
Yes.
And I've been very fortunate in Australia where I'm actually too busy, so
Yes.
I'm very thankful for that. But you work really hard to make sure that's, if that's how you want to operate, then you work towards building a lot of connections and working in a lot of different areas, because you need to save, money and build a life and a future. And some people are fine just, they just want to do that 1 to 2 jobs a month, and that's fine for them. But I've been very fortunate that hasn't been the case for me.
So with your connections, I mean, I'm just thinking of it from a business standpoint. With your connections, do you is it always sort of buzzing around in your head? I haven't heard from so-and-so for a while, I'll just drop them a message and keep in their vision, or does that not have to happen? You kind of know enough people that they will contact you if you're needed?
Yeah, I think it's changed over the years. I think when I first started, you'd pick up the phone a lot, oh, maybe I should just touch base with that director and see how they're going for the cricket season coming up. Or, you would probably be chasing a lot more, but I feel like you do get to a point in TV where people are calling you, and it just is word of mouth, and it builds, and I've gotten to a really good place with that, but it's taken a lot of time, and you have to be pretty tenacious.
I'm sure.
And proactive, yeah.
And did things like, were you working in sport in the pandemic, for example, or were you working in TV?
So I was actually doing lifestyle programming. So the COVID, I think for a lot of people, it did pivot their, career paths and their whole lives, right? So just before COVID, I was traveling for about 8 months doing lifestyle TV around the world. And about a week before COVID hit, I signed a full-time contract to make, to travel internationally and continue making these programs. And then COVID hit. So it all happened, I got through COVID really well because I did sign that full-time contract and I was just making, programming for Australia, little travel shows within Western Australia and cooking shows within WA as well. So
they could still be filmed and go ahead.
Yeah, we were fine because of the way our government, our state government had operated. To keep, shut all the borders and things like that. So I wasn't actually doing sport at that time, so it was perfection. So I still had income coming in, and I was very much thinking that the series producer, executive producer role was probably what I was going to focus on solely. And it wasn't until the end of COVID that we actually had the AFL, so Aussie Rules Grand Final in WA because they couldn't play in Melbourne due to the restrictions. And that's when I got booked on that to floor manage on it, and that was when it all turned for me. And I was like, no, I have to do this full time. This is what my sole focus to be is on sport. So I was just very fortunate that during COVID I was making lifestyle programming, so I wasn't relying on sport. Whereas a lot of people struggled because
presumably sport, even in Australia, came to a stop. Did it to a standstill?
They were in hubs, and the crew that were working on it, there were heavy restrictions. You were also hubbed with the teams, so it was all perfect timing, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was almost a kind of a beautiful accident then, really.
Yeah.
Because of COVID, a particular game wasn't played where it should have been. It was where you were.
Yes.
You got booked to do it.
Yes.
And that sort of turned your life around. And
it
you
did.
Thought,
I have to be doing this.
Yeah, so you went from kind of, if you like, the security of lifestyle TV where, I mean, I know, as you say, it's problem solving, but in some instances it was a little bit safer, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
But then suddenly going to live TV, there is no second chance, is there?
Absolutely no, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
You have to be bang on every time, So
every time you attend a match or a game, whatever they're called, for the type of sport, is it like an adrenaline rush, or do you feel anxious beforehand? What's going through your mind?
Now I just thoroughly enjoy it. I probably, when I first started, when I was much younger, like really starting like floor managing when I was 19, 20, I probably was a little nervous. Now, no, I just feel really comfortable. Yeah. I feel it's like I'm in my right place.
Well, that's
I'm
good.
Working with, fabulous people. I'm getting to meet new people. I feel really excited to go to work. I get a buzz, and it wouldn't be, I'm not nervous. I just feel really excited to be there and to be involved in it. And I can say, like, I actually am genuinely passionate about the result of the match and what the storyline of that match is. I just thoroughly enjoy my time working on each of the games.
So presumably there is a production team. You are part of a team. You are the production manager, potentially.
No, I'm not. No, there's another production manager.
Right, okay. So, but you are part of a team.
Yes.
And that team is, again, very transitory. You'd have some people you know on it and some people you don't?
Yeah.
Or
there'd be half and half most games that you work on. You know some, you don't know some.
And then from that, your role would be to make sure that the right people got interviewed at the right time?
Yeah, so there's producers, that have built a, rundown, or for people who are following, who don't know what a rundown is, it's basically the order of which, of the commitments that we need to get away that we're putting to air. So, we might have an interview with a manager and a player. It's that those producers have put this product together. They've worked with the teams. They know what story they want to tell on TV. I mean, you don't know some elements, right? Because things change when the game starts. But they have put together a product, they hand me their rundown, and I just make sure it happens for them. So my goal is to make sure that what they wanted is going to happen on the field, and I talk to whoever it is that I need to make that happen with. So whether it's the league, or the different teams, and our crew, communicating with everyone, how are we actually going to get this done? We've got this, for example, we have, say, a pre-game interview with a manager. Okay, so at 1 o'clock, we've got an interview with our manager. It's going to be happening here. I need to make sure we have, a couple of lights. We need our camera there, audio, make sure it's just one mic. We've got one presenter off camera. I'm communicating with everyone to make sure they know where they need to be so that they can get the job done for those producers in the truck.
Wow, I admire you. I sincerely admire you.
Oh, thank you.
Do you need to have, the fact that you say you want to work in sport, or you do work in sport, I'm assuming you do love it, but do you have to have a good knowledge? I don't know, let's say you had to go off and do a snooker game or something you maybe didn't have a knowledge in. Would you have to read up about the rules first, or you're just there to do, what's asked of you and it doesn't?
You are facilitating a product, so I think if you had a late call up to go work on the darts and you didn't really know what was going on, you'd figure it out. I do think that to be good at what you do as a floor manager, you do, and for everyone really on that crew, you should know, who the key players are, I'm talking in football, maybe just... This is where I'm going with this one.
Yes.
But, you should know who your key players are, the managers, maybe who's attending the match, who might be, a dignitary or whomever it is. But you should be well researched because you're communicating with people who this is their full-time, this is their world.
Yes.
You look a bit silly if you don't know, who they're talking about.
And you mentioned football there. Is women's football big in Australia, or is it very much a man's thing?
Well, after the Women's World Cup, it's massive. Yes. So that was huge for Australia. I think really over the world, I think everyone's really gotten behind women's football. And I don't think it really was as big as what it is now. Because
so it's a very recent step forward, really, then, isn't it?
Yeah, but everyone soaked it up. The stadiums were full. I've never seen an atmosphere like it. Like, I actually have goosebumps thinking about the noise of the crowd just getting behind the women. It was incredible. And I'm so glad that Australia had the opportunity to host it, because I think they did, and New Zealand obviously, but they did such a great job, and the Aussies really got behind women's sport. Yeah.
So that must have been like quite a dream booking, really.
Yeah,
it's something that you would really want to do and exploit. But, and just thinking about that, actually, what is we tend to say camera men, but I think actually it's just camera people now. There's a lot. Is there women? Is it a good mix of males and females on productions and cameras, or is it? Are you more of a woman in a man's world? I don't know.
It's definitely changed. I think over the last 5 years, I've noticed a massive difference. I think there's a lot more women working, particularly in sport. You do see it's sort of the mix is. It is changing. So I think when I first started, it was predominantly men, and often I am the only female, but there's a lot more women coming in now, and they're so passionate and driven and fabulous at what they do. I've met so many incredible women working in live TV. So no, it's definitely changing.
Right.
But I think also when you're working in that high pressure environment, it has to be the best person for the job. So I think people deal with stress very differently, and so it probably was a male dominated industry, but women are definitely coming in and they're doing amazing at what they at their jobs. They're incredible.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, really, isn't it? There's always a lot of kind of seeing the right people in the right place, where actually you just want the person that's best for that job, and it doesn't matter whether they're male, female, old, young, it just doesn't matter. If they've got the right skill set for that job and they're the best person for that job, that's the person that should be there, really, isn't it? So I do get treated with a lot of respect from all the men most of the men that I work with. I'm very lucky, but we're so busy. Like I don't actually notice it. No,
that if I'm in London, you just you're all just working. You're a well-oiled machine.
Yes.
So you just.
And would you say with the lifestyle TV, when you got to travel the world, was that something that you were like, wow, this is a big box ticked? I am doing a job. I'm being paid to travel the world and do this, or was it very much, well, you're here for 2 days, you're there for 2 days, you don't really see what's going on? How did it?
Every job was different. Every trip was different. It was definitely a big box ticked for me. It was a dream job, and it still sort of is, in a way. How could you not love it?
Absolutely. I mean, if I were to read your CV, I'm still confused by it all, as in it just sounds so diverse. If I were to see your CV, what would your kind of your top kind of biggest achievements be in your very young life? But I don't even know if you do the CVs the same in Australia, but here we kind of have your kind of a few bullet points of your main achievements. What would you say yours are, Michaela?
I would say floor managing on the FIFA Women's World Cup.
Oh, yeah.
Working on the Australian Open it's been a big dream of mine, so to floor manage on that is huge, and I don't take it for granted. And I would also say, series producing, on travel shows, and that was an incredible achievement, and I'm very proud that I was able to do it. So yeah,
I'm so in awe of you. I think you are an amazing young lady. Where does life go from here? I mean, is there a kind of a progression route, or are you there? Are you doing what you're doing? What happens over the next 5-10 years for Michaela?
Oh, that's a big question.
As in, just generally, do you see other things that you think one day I would like to do that, or are you in the very enviable position of thinking I'm right where I want to be right now, and I'll worry about next year?
Yeah, I think it just changes constantly. It just depends on who you meet and the conversations you have. I think that I definitely want to be, I want to do an Olympics. That's huge for me.
Yes.
I want to work on Wimbledon. There's, the big hit items that I really want to be a part of, and to see how they operate. So I've got, a lot of aspirations to still, work as a floor manager and a producer in those big events.
And does technology play a part? Do suddenly you have, new, things that you're listening through, or, new mics? Is there always things sort of coming up that you've kind of got to, just suddenly you're live and you've got to be able to have new technology and things? Or is it reasonably, stable and you kind of know what you're going into?
Always changing. In Australia, we went from having all production crew on site to having what we call a hub system. So we have, if we were doing a game in Perth, like an AFL game in Perth, all our production team actually aren't on site, they're in Melbourne. So they're remoting in and talking to us. So that does change the job completely, because there's no face-to-face time. They can't physically see the stadium, they can't physically talk to the team. So everyone becomes that, there's more responsibility.
They can't even see it.
No, and it's actually not as big here in the UK. I think they're starting to do more hubs here, but hubbed matches, but it's big in Australia. So that was a huge change for all of us, and thank God they did do that, because it came in just before COVID. So we're all experts at it now. But, here in the UK, I do know that their hub systems, from what I understand, from talking to some of the camera operators here, is that there's a massive delay in from the production crew off-site to them there on the ground. So when the director's talking, they're 3 seconds, 5 seconds delayed, which is huge. A ball can travel from one end of the pitch to the other in that time. So they're still working through that, those challenges. But I think it's always forever changing, Studio cameras for news, now they used to be operated, they were PED cameras and they were operated by actual people. Now it's all automated and you write codes in. So I went through that when I was in news, so
oh my goodness.
There's just always, it's forever changing. And I think that's why you need to be multi-skilled in this industry. I think you should be really in every industry. I think you should learn everyone, everyone's, what they're doing and why they do it. And, you should be very proactive. But in our industry, it's actually really good to be multi-skilled, because you don't know if your role's the next role to be, automated or to change.
Yes.
You don't know. It's like, who's next? It's like Hunger Games for technology.
It's funny, I was thinking how different people will perceive time. When you were saying there's a huge lapse, 3 to 5 seconds, I was thinking, I'd be delighted with 3 to 5 seconds on my internet when it's trying to load something. But you're absolutely right. In live TV, a football or, a moving element, That's a long time, isn't it, to be going, what's happened? So yes,
Totally.
they really have to, but I guess it is relying on the internet, is it? These hubs, is that why there is a delay, or are they direct lines? Or you probably don't know, actually.
No, actually, I think it could be satellite. I'm actually not sure.
No.
I don't know. It's all like wired in.
So they have to slicken it up, don't they, for things like that? I guess out of choice, but you know.
Well, if a director asks you to find a player and you maybe didn't catch the name, or you want clarification, so it's 3 seconds to you, you ask the questions, 3 seconds back, he then gets it. The game's totally moved on by this point, and he's like, no, number 57.
Yes.
It's like, oh, don't even worry about it. But he's already framed up. It's just like, oh, God.
Right, yes.
You know?
So, yeah.
So, but I don't, it's, you know, it's not the case for every single hubbed match here, absolutely not. But that is a technical issue that they're dealing with.
And they would be moving to hubbed matches. Why? Because it's cheaper not to have everybody on site? Or
Yeah, it is. I mean, they could, so for example, you know, if there's 7 matches of football or whatever it is, or 5 matches of Premier League on, you know, on a Saturday, they could all just be the same crew going back to back to back to back.
Yes.
You know, they could.
Yes,
so,
if they're not actually there in the arena. Yeah. They could be multitasking as well, couldn't they?
They could.
Right. Is there anything I should be asking you, Michaela? Because this is so out of my knowledge base, and I just felt so privileged to be able to pin you down and do this interview. Is there anything I should be asking about your career that I've missed, or?
Well, probably just for anyone looking to get into the industry, I would say don't give up. You know, have good communication skills. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think that is huge. If you really want to get into the industry and you don't know how to do it, start just asking somebody, because somebody will know somebody else and they'll connect you. Where, you know, I think people get very scared to ask questions, you know. So if you're looking to get into the industry, it's not an easy industry, I would say, but it definitely, if you start asking questions and you're just really tenacious, you will get there. If you're a hard worker, you'll make it.
Oh, that's lovely. That's absolutely lovely. Well, I do sincerely thank you for your time, Michaela.
Thanks, Julie.
And I look forward to seeing you again one day, maybe.
Absolutely. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you. Bye-bye. For help with all your job searching needs, do visit one of our digital drop-in venues. On a Monday, we are open 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. at our Poveris Centre, and on a Tuesday, we are open 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at our Kentwood Centre. In our sessions, we offer free use of computers for job searching, advice on creating a winning CV, plus lots of short training courses to gain skills in the digital world.
This podcast has been produced by Bromley Adult Education College. For full details of how we can support your return to work, visit our website www.baec.ac.uk and search for Digital Drop-In. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast to receive notifications of new episodes.